that inch makes a huge difference.
The inch always makes a big difference, Spite.
And then you pull to a stoplight and you look down at your temperature gauge and you're like, oh shit, I'm at 220 degrees.
Yep.
And I'm roasting my nuts. Need more yeet energy, like everything
more
else.
Energy. When in doubt, yeet it out, baby.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Beginner Bike Giveaway series. We're here in the new Yammie Noob HQ. See our studio space a little bit different now. Spite and I have a little bit more breathing room, which is good.
Yep.
Yeah. Today we're going to be doing a special episode because we're featuring Spite's personal VFR versus our giveaway Street Triple. Stay tuned. So before jumping into today's video, I just wanted to let you guys know that we are giving this motorcycle away. If you head on over to yammynoob.co, you can sign up for a subscription package. You get access to our Discord server, exclusive content, all kinds of cool stuff, pretty much direct access to me. I'm on there pretty much every day. People hitting me up with questions and I try my best to answer all of them. It's a great way to get in touch with me, and it's also just a great way to support what we do here on this channel. So if you like what we do, hit the link down below and consider subscribing. All right, so Spite, you thought of this video idea for today, so why don't you walk us through what your idea was behind it?
Right, so everybody on the channel's here for sport bikes, right? Everybody loves sport bikes, going fast, looking cool, but I think a lot of people get stuck in their head the idea that a sport bike is covered in plastic, leaned forward, and, you know, is at a racetrack. But you live your life in a city, right? And you need to live with the motorcycle you buy in a city. So what do you actually gain or lose by having a fully fared sport bike next to a naked bike? And what I'd really like to get out of this is showing that a naked bike is every bit a sport bike in the city, in a twisty road on the highway, without having the complications of a fully fared bike like this. Now, again, before the comments get at me, yes, this is not a super sport motorcycle, I'm well aware of that, but it will function well enough as a stand-in for one because it has all of the same plastics and all of the same feel while not necessarily being as ergonomically committed.
Yeah, but I think it's even better that it's not a proper super sport super bike because we're actually comparing closer to apples here, right? So like both of these bikes have ergonomics that are pretty relaxed. They're not super pitched over. Definitely something you can live with every day. They have a lot of, you know, same kind of characteristics of, you know, being a streetable bike that's friendly around town. So let's talk specs because everyone loves them. So what's going on with the VFR?
This is a 782cc V4, liquid cooled of course, and it is putting down 104 horsepower and 55 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah, that's really comparable to the Street Triple, right? It's got a 765cc triple cylinder engine making about 116 horsepower and 55-ish foot-pounds of torque, so pretty similar figures, honestly.
A little bit more grunt,
yeah.
But you know, honestly, at the end of the day, the difference between 110, 115, and 100 horsepower, negligible on the street.
Yeah, because it's all at the top end anyways. Yeah. As far as standard equipment, does this bike have adjustable suspension?
This bike, on this version, this is the standard. On the deluxe, you can get adjustable front forks. This is stock. You're stuck with what it is from the factory.
Not adjustable,
I believe that the Deluxe Interceptor has regular forks, not upside down. This is,
really?
As you can see, this is just a regular fork setup. But they are adjustable from the factory in deluxe trim.
Right. Wow. That's interesting. I'm seeing the little Showa logo here on the right side up fork. So yeah, same, you know, similar setup over here on the triple. I mean, you're getting upside down, fully adjustable Showa suspension, definitely an upmarket kind of feature, but you know, for street duty, you're not going to see a huge difference with that kind of stuff. Honestly,
is it fully adjustable? Oh,
it
yep,
is.
there it is. I see a little
fully
screws at the top.
Rebound, compression, preload, front and rear. So kind of a cool feature for it.
But this is a slightly more upmarket bike
Yeah.
This is a 2014, that's a 2019.
Yeah, that's a bit unfair, yeah.
Despite the fact that when this came out in 2014, they were selling this bike for $12,500.
Yeah.
Which is
that's a lot.
That's like criminal, honestly.
Yeah, it's Honda, what are you doing? Like selling a bike with right side up forks for nearly 13 grand. Yeah, this bike, brand new, is 10.5. Yeah, so progress, right? Hopefully. Yep. That's what you want to see.
Now that we've got the specs kind of out of the way, we've showed that these are on paper pretty comparable. I wanted to really get into kind of the nitty gritty nuts and bolts of what makes these bikes different and what you have to live with when you make the decision of fully fared over naked. Because I'd make the argument you have to co-sign on a lot more effort when you buy a bike like this than when you buy something like that. So
it's much more than just wind protection, yeah.
Absolutely. So first of all, I'd like to start off with maintenance, right? So everybody knows that you have to do some basic maintenance on your own. Chain maintenance, oil changes, air filter, all that good stuff you can do at home. But the thing that you have to realize, you have to take all of this off when you want to pull the oil filter out. So you really do have to take it down to the studs, and I've had to pull this bike apart a handful of times, and it's a complicated, just in-depth, fiddly process, especially when you're putting this back on. There's always a little, hold your breath moment when you pull that last tab off of, did I break it?
Yeah.
Or did it actually just come loose?
Definitely. Yeah, and it's such a stark difference when you're looking at a naked bike like the Street Triple because, I can literally see the oil filter right there. I can see the drain plug over on this side right over here. It could not be easier. You get the bike on a stand, drop the oil, put the filter on. It's a 10-minute job.
Absolutely.
So even bigger jobs like a clutch or coolant or anything else you kind of want to get at, a full system would not be difficult to install on this bike, which I think we're going to be able to do with the Leo Vinci that's coming for it. But it's just so much easier to work on. But flip side, like we mentioned, if you have an incident where you have a low side with this bike, if something happens to where it's going to be on its side, it's much more likely for you to have an issue where it's going to start leaking fluids. Yeah,
I would argue that on a motorcycle, on any naked motorcycle, and this kind of even goes for cruisers as well, you need some form of protection on your bike.
Totally.
Without a doubt, because if you lay it down, you're going to be touching very important parts, right? And they're not easily replaceable, despite the fact that they're right there. They're expensive. They need to be bike specific. Often they involve paper gaskets that are a pain in the butt.
New clutch cover might be $300 depending on what manufacturer you're running with.
Exactly.
Cases are very expensive.
But if you have a low side scenario with a bike like this, if your fairings don't crack, just sand them down, repaint them.
Yeah.
It really is that simple. Or if you wanted to be bougie, you could just buy a new one.
Yeah.
But again, then we're talking about a new set of fairings. This upper fairing right here, $500. And because it includes this part and that part. And then the lower fairing there, it's $150.
Yep.
So there is a little bit of built-in crash protection, but you need to be willing to show some battle scars.
Yeah, definitely. So another thing to think about naked bikes as well is, they are cheaper to get entered into them, right? So naked bikes typically MSRP lower prices than fully fared bikes. You look at something like an MT-09 versus a brand new R6. MT-09 is like under 9 grand. Brand new R6 is like well over $12,000 at this point, which is kind of crazy. You're looking at cheaper costs as well for maintenance if you have to take it to a shop because you don't have to spend hours pulling the fairings apart and that kind of stuff. So overall, a naked bike is going to be a little bit cheaper to own and repair and maintain as well. But I think we've done enough jibber jabber. Let's get them out on the road and let's see what they're like.
Sounds good.
Alrighty guys, so we're starting this one off in motion on the highway. And I think this is the big question that everyone has about these types of bikes, right? It's like, oh, how's it gonna do on the highway? Does it suck having, no wind protection on the highway? And Spud, I think you can speak to this one because you used to own a naked bike, you've owned many naked bikes, and now you got the VFR. So how do you feel about blasting down the highway on one of these bikes?
honestly, going on the highway on either bike, if it's designed to not have a windscreen, the wind blast is really going to be very smooth, very predictable, and it's going to be just all over your helmet. So especially if you have a nice helmet like mine, where it's aerodynamically designed, it's, you know, this is an RF 1200. It is a track day helmet.
No, Shoei didn't pay us. We can't say the brand.
But
just kidding.
you know, the idea is it's just going to slide through the air. If you have a naked bike, you're going to have a very clean profile of air coming at you, whereas this coming off the windscreen, it can actually be quite turbulent. So if you're just upright, you're getting kind of some dirty air hitting your chest, and the only way to alleviate that is to tuck way down, and you don't want to do that if you're on the highway commuting to work, you know. So unless you're really cooking it, you know, talking triple digit speeds, honestly the naked bike is just a nice, clean, smooth, predictable wind blast. You know, it is there, it's omnipresent, but honestly it is here too.
Yeah, I will say I've actually ridden fully fared bikes that have like a different windscreen on an aftermarket windscreen, and you know, depending on how tall that windscreen is or how it's set up, it can actually be worse than a naked bike in my opinion, because it makes the air so turbulent and so kind of unpredictable and choppy. Whereas, like you said, a naked bike, you're on it, it was kind of designed to do this from the factory, so it's really not that bad. Where you feel it most, in my opinion, is in your chest. At least for me, that's where I feel it when I'm going down the highway on a naked bike. You feel it in your chest, but to your point, if you're not pushing, you know, 100, 110 miles per hour, which you might do like maybe once in a while, like I certainly don't go well over 100 that often unless I'm on track. And yeah, I feel like it's just really not that bad. I think some people might, you know, kind of overblow it in their own minds.
Yeah, I think people got to realize, and that again is going to be, I think, a common theme about these bikes, is you need to realize what you're doing. You know, are you hitting that track every day, or you know, every weekend? Or
man, I wish I was at it every day. That'd be fucking great.
But are you the weekend rider who's using it as a commuting machine? And in a commuting scenario like this, I would say the difference is marginal, honestly. And to that point, when you're going that fast, if you have a cross breeze, it's very noticeable on this bike. Just because, and maybe it's the Interceptor, but I have a feeling, because I had this on the Ninja too, that to a more or less equal extent, any fully fared bike is going to act like a sail to any kind of cross breeze.
Yeah, definitely. I've actually seen that in our Discord server a lot, where folks who have just started riding, maybe they have a smaller displacement bike. I've seen this question come up a lot actually, where they're like, oh, like, is it normal to like be going on the highway and hit with a crosswind and, you know, feel like a sail in the wind? And I think that's something that a lot of people might not be expecting, because when you're in a car, you never feel that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But when you're on a lighter weight bike going faster, you definitely can feel that cross breeze. But yeah, like right now, you know, I'm going to swing by you right here. I'm doing 75-ish miles per hour. I feel perfectly fine on this bike, man. I could easily ride and commute with this every day. Totally fine.
Now, I think what a lot of people are going to be concerned about is something like, how does aerodynamics affect roll-on? So why don't we do like a little fourth gear roll-on here?
Yeah, okay. 3, 2, 1. I think I jumped you a little bit, but as you guys can see, I mean, there's not a huge difference.
And how did it feel, you know, wind-wise? How did you feel the wind as you were picking up your pace there?
Yeah, I purposefully tried to not tuck in as much as I normally would, because I wanted to see what it would do. And yeah, it pulls just fine. I don't sense like a huge lack of acceleration. Obviously, you know, if you want to get the most out of it, the best thing you can do is get really low and tucked in, but it's really not necessary, you know?
Yep. I love hearing the intake before you even pass me.
It's the best part of this bike. Oh, I love having me some tank grips, baby. Stuck like glue. So moseying through here in town, I think one thing that we should talk about is ergonomics, you know? So on a naked bike, I think we're in an interesting spot with this video because that bike's got risers on it, and this bike is actually one of the most aggressive naked bikes that you can buy. But I'm thinking of something like, you know, the MT-09 versus like a Ninja 650, or maybe like the VFR when it's like in stock form. You know, maybe you want to talk us through ergonomics a little bit for naked bikes versus fully fared?
Yeah, totally. So, again, I did have a naked bike for a long time, and the main thing that struck me as soon as I got the VFR is just how much lower the bars were.
Yep.
So these bars are pretty much right in line with the seat on this motorcycle. So
yeah.
No matter what I'm doing, I always have to have a forward bend, and that puts pressure on your wrists. You know, it does all that good stuff that people complain about with super sports. And that's specifically why I put risers on here, so that I wasn't, you know, here. I was here. And they're only about an inch in, you know, rise, but that inch makes a huge difference.
The inch always makes a big difference, but just those couple of inches really makes a difference.
I gotta softball it in there for you.
I've made that joke at least like 4 times now, but it's never not funny to me because I'm a 14-year-old boy, apparently. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to point out too is the VFR, you know, despite it being a fully fared sport bike, isn't even like it's not a super sport or a super bike type of ergonomics, so, you know, those bikes are even more aggressive for street riding and street duty. If you guys have ever had the chance, like, go and sit on an R6 at a dealership or go and ride one around town, and you'll quickly notice just how ridiculously uncomfortable they are around town. I would much rather be on a street triple or a VFR than an R6 for this kind of stuff.
And then beyond ergonomics, there is a point to be made here for not having plastics in town. You know, everybody likes, oh, I'm going to cruise down, you know, the main street of my town. I'm going to have this sick looking plastic with all these like badass designs on it. And then you pull to a stoplight and you look down at your temperature gauge and you're like, oh shit, I'm at 220 degrees and I'm roasting my nuts. So, you know, a naked bike, just, they stay so much cooler.
Yeah, they've got more air flowing through them. They've got more ability to allow the heat to dissipate out of the engine. I've noticed that too. The naked bikes tend to run cooler and easier than fully fared bikes.
And you know, it's nice today because we have, you know, it's a little bit cool when we're moving, so it's acceptable to have a little bit of heat coming from the bike. But, you know, in the dead of summer down here, it's 110 degrees on the asphalt.
Yep.
The last thing in the world you want is a big toasty engine right between your legs.
Ducati Panigale owners can attest to that. It's basically suicide trying to own one of those here in Texas. You know what I almost did today, but I felt like it would have been too on the nose, is I almost wore my Triumph shirt. just to let people know where my my affinity lies, as if it was any surprise.
And you know, it's a lot of people have just made the comments that sport bikes are not at home in the city.
I disagree, you know, honestly.
I mean, I think there's a place for them, but I'd much rather just have a actual true blue naked bike.
Yeah, and I think that can sometimes trip people up too, where they're like, oh, is my naked bike not a sport bike? But yeah, like we said in the garage, you know, like these two bikes 100% are sport bikes.
Mm-hmm.
They're designed to do quote-unquote sporty things. They want to go down twisty roads. They want to accelerate quickly. They have high-revving engines. They have, you know, high technology in them. They're definitely sport bikes.
Yeah.
Just because they don't have, you know, ridiculous ergonomics and an engine that revs to 17,000 RPM or whatever the hell, doesn't mean that they aren't extremely capable bikes. But yeah, I think an interesting thing to talk about as well, just like, yeah, I think the nomenclature of some motorcycle like categories can be really confusing as well. Mm-hmm. You know, like you said, the VFR could be considered a sport touring bike. This is like a sport naked bike. Yamaha lists the MT-09 as a hyper naked on their website for some reason. It's all very confusing.
Yeah, and I think that does it a disservice because somebody's looking for a sport bike that just says sport, you know. It would be so much easier if they just were sport bikes, you know?
Yeah.
So even going back and forth from my bike to this one, the bars are higher. Just, I can already tell they're not nearly as pitched forward.
But the seat is lower on this, for sure. My leg has much more of a bend than I had with that. And the
Really?
pegs are way higher on that, for sure. Yeah.
Maybe that just is down to the fact that that is sport touring, so lower pegs for a less
Maybe.
aggressive bend in the knee.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you want to, I can lower the seat for you. That's the beauty of that bike. It's got an adjustable seat height.
That is true. What year is this thing again?
That is a 2014. Oh my God. Just instantly, that intake sound is black magic to the brain.
Yeah, dude.
Oh God.
It's a fantastic motorcycle.
But I can definitely feel just the street manners of this bike right away.
And I can
Even
really
over the
feel
Interceptor.
the kind of sport touring, relaxed kind of vibe of the VFR as well. I've said it before, the VFR is so funny because it literally feels like an oversized Ninja 400 or R3, honestly. It just feels like one of those bikes, but just bigger and better in every way.
This is going back to back from the Interceptor to this feels so interesting. Like it doesn't quite know what it wants to be. Is it pitched forward? Is it upright? I feel like my whole body is at a slant forward.
Yeah, and that's because of that. That bike has the subframe that's literally exactly like the Daytona, right? So from the back half, that's literally a super sport motorcycle. So that seat's super high up, super pitched forward. But then the rest of it is proper naked bike stuff. So
It's a very interesting feeling.
I think the first thing I noticed with the VFR versus the Street Triple is it flicks over a little bit slower, right? It's not as darty, but that's to be expected because it's more of a touring kind of relaxed bike. Lots of plastic too, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of forget that sometimes. So much plastic.
I mean, this is just, even sitting on this, it's so much colder.
Definitely.
It's a little chilly out this morning. I have a little bit of a chill sitting on this bike right now.
Yeah, versus the VFR, I feel like I'm sitting on top of a microwave. Yeah, first and second feels just fine.
All right, maybe it's just in my head.
Yep.
Need more yeet energy, like everything
More yeet
else.
energy. When in doubt, yeet it out, baby.
I think that's the new T-shirt right there.
Yeah. It is funny how like so much of motorcycling, whether you're riding off-road or riding on track, it's just about having yeet energy.
Mm-hmm.
Except not when you're on road. Do not have yeet energy when you're on the road, guys. Take it easy on the street.
That is the one place you don't exactly need to yeet it out.
You really don't.
And I mean, isn't that the nature of a nice little naked bike like this, or a sport tourer like that, is to have something that's well mannered everywhere.
Totally.
So you definitely don't need 160 horsepower. Everybody loves to say they need it for like passing on the highway or whatever.
Totally, yeah. They're like, oh, for low revs and stuff like that, but nah, you don't, dude. Is it fun? Yeah, it's awesome. It's super cool to have like 160 horsepower at your disposal. Is it necessary? Nah.
Absolutely not. I mean, that right there is just plenty.
This bike sounds great, man. This is so sick.
I love the sound of that V4. Literally last night, I turned it on just to listen to it idle.
Yeah. I think one point that I'd like to make as well, you're talking about ergonomics and that kind of stuff. Every manufacturer is going to have a bit of a different take on what they kind of consider sporty or what they're trying to get out of a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are in the market for a sport touring bike or a naked bike, go and sit on a lot of them because you'll learn a lot just by sitting on them.
Mm-hmm.
Like sitting on this versus the Street Triple versus the MT-09, those are like three completely different sitting experiences. Just sitting on them, not even riding them, but just like this experience of sitting on them. You'll learn a lot about a bike just by sitting on it.
Yeah, it becomes very clear what they want you to do with that bike very quickly. And I mean, that's kind of just another nail in the coffin on for a super sport on the street, 600, 1000, whatever. They're all here, you know, no matter what, they're all here.
Yeah.
And your hands are below your knees. It's just, they're excruciating to sit on.
Yeah.
But then again, you get it on a track, and then you're not sitting on it, right? You're just attached to it while you're hurtling through a corner.
Yep. Yeah, your butt's hovering off that seat. Your outside leg is just hooking onto that tank, and then everything kind of falls into place, and you get what it's trying to do. But, you know, if you're doing that kind of stuff on the street, your days are numbered for sure.
Mm-hmm. You're overriding on the street.
Yeah.
Finally. Ah, damn it.
It never fails.
Oh, shit. Oh, God. This thing is quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, you keep it right around like 4,000. It's like, what are you doing, you stupid fool? Red line's higher up. Let's go.
So you want to wrap up your final thoughts on our on-road section before we wrap it up in the garage?
Sure. I think the main takeaways from just riding these bikes out on the street is the best thing you can say about a sport bike on the street is that it looks good. You know,
yeah.
It looks really good on the street. Other than that, I would give pretty much every point to a naked bike. Stays cooler, you're more comfortable, and they're just as useful. You know, they have the same power characteristics, if not better power characteristics, than a super sport.
Yeah, I tend to agree, man. I think it's hard to come up with the reason of why you would want a super sport for street duty. Again, unless it's like the only way I can think of it is if you're like a single bike, you only want one motorcycle. You are going to the track every weekend, and yet for some reason you still want to ride that thing on the street to work every day. That's the only reason I can think of why you'd want like an R6 as your bike. Because otherwise a naked's better in literally every way.
Yeah, just go out, grab yourself any naked bike, and I guarantee you'll have just as much fun, if not more fun, than the other super sport guys in your group rides. 100%.
Yeah. Fun story, I remember when I had my 675R and a buddy of mine let me ride his MT-09 for the first time. This was back in like 2015 or 2016. And I was blown away by how much fun that bike was. I was like, oh my God, it's comfortable. It's got ass loads of torque. This is a great motorcycle, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think if you've only ever ridden a super sport, definitely give a naked a shot because it's gonna show you a lot of things, that's for sure.
All right, guys, we're now back in the garage, wrapping up today's video. Spite, what did you think of the bikes on the road?
I think that they performed pretty much one for one, honestly.
Yeah, I would say so.
I would argue that, again, one of the main reasons people want to buy something like a fully fared bike for commuting is, oh, well, I'm going to be on the highway, I need some wind protection. Really, it's not that much difference like we discussed.
No.
These are designed to not have wind protection.
Yeah.
So you're getting that nice clean air. And again, this is a little bit warmer, so you kind of have to co-sign on that. And again, in my opinion, I personally believe that the fully fared bike is a vanity purchase, honestly.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that when you're getting a bike that has full fairings, maybe it's because, you know, you grew up and you saw a sport bike and you want the full plastics, and they do look cool, right? Like a bike with full fairings does look neat. And I think to a lot of people, if they're not used to seeing a naked bike, they might not really get the look that it's going for. You know, I know a lot of people think that the looks on this bike are controversial. They think it's ugly. I think it looks super cool. But I also remember that when I first started getting into motorcycles and I started researching and I started looking at naked bikes, they didn't really appeal to me at first. I was kind of like, well, I don't know about this. You know, this looks like more correct of what I think of motorcycle.
Right.
So I think for a lot of folks, they don't really get what a naked bike is. And maybe that's why they kind of tend towards that side. But yeah, I would agree. I think on the street, It's 1 for 1. I think this has a lot more pros than that, and I think it makes more sense to get a naked in just about every situation. I can't really think of any positives to get a fully faired bike, unless you just like the way it looks. If you like the bike, get the bike, guys. By all means, if you like a motorcycle, get the bike you want to get. But from a real kind of like nitty-gritty value perspective and just like a what makes sense perspective, I can't really think of a reason not to go for a naked.
Honestly, and you know, I think one of the points that I'd really like to drive home, again, is that this is a sport bike. 100%, it's a sport bike.
Thoroughbred.
It doesn't need to be covered in plastic to be able to hang with your buddies on R6s.
Yeah.
You know, it's making pretty much the same power. It's making it in a more usable package.
Yeah.
And you're going to be more comfortable.
Don't look at top speeds, guys. Like if you're looking at R6, it's like, oh, it can go, you know, 160 miles per hour. This thing can only go like 130. You're never gonna go that fast. You might do it like once or twice in your life on the street, and that's kind of dumb to do, but you're gonna do it, right? Like everyone is kind of stupid sometimes. But it's just not that relevant. From like 0 to even 100 miles per hour, a naked is right there with any fully faired bike within its same class. You're not gonna see a huge difference, honestly.
This makes so much more sense. I own this. I love it. But there are times when I just want to tear my hair out, and that would hurt. I got a lot of hair to tear out.
He does, yeah.
Just pulling the fairings off of this thing's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to just go home and pull the filter out with one hand. Just, you know, yank, done, oil changes over.
Yeah, and it was funny because you came from the CB900F to this bike, so I'm sure it was kind of an adjustment period where the CB900, you know, you'd work on that thing all the time, work on it, oil changes, whatever you wanted to do, versus this where it's like, oof, I gotta do something to the VFR, let me block out some time and you know, make sure that I got the time to do it. I think the thing that really drives home for me is we were coming back on the ride, and this was off camera, but you mentioned how you needed to get some work done. I think you wanted to heat wrap the back cylinder or something, and you're like, I'm just gonna take this to somebody. Like you didn't even want to think about doing that yourself, just because of how monumentally annoying it would be and how much time it would take.
Yeah, I'd have to pull off the seat, the back pan, all of the fairings. It would just, it's an enormous pain in the ass, and I would, it's more worth my time to just give some dude $500 to do the job for me, honestly.
But yeah, I think that's kind of gonna wrap up our thoughts today. I can't really think of anything else. I feel like we've beaten that horse pretty much into a pulp today.
Yeah, get a naked bike, guys.
Get a naked bike.
TLDR, just get a naked bike.
Yeah, they're freaking sweet. They're easy to work on, they're fun to ride, and maybe you don't like the looks just yet, but I can almost guarantee you it's gonna grow on you. But with that, thanks so much for watching, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you later.